Chapter 4. At first, the giddiness bubbling up inside him surprised Wedge, then gratified him as he slipped into his chair behind Admiral Akbar. They're actually here. The Provisional Council. I never thought I'd see the day. He felt the same excitement inside him that he'd known as a child when some alien or famous Corellian had come to his parents' refueling station. Had he been asked, he would have assumed that being in the same room with the leaders of the new republic would not seem that special. But it was, and it made him think that the war hadn't burned all of his innocence out of him yet. Mon Mothma, still looking strong and serene despite the traces of gray creeping into her hair, stood in their place at the circular table. I call this meeting of the Provisional Council to order. Councillor Bathog of Elam sends regrets at being unable to attend, but we have a quorum, so we will be able to proceed. Councillor Organa, if you would be so kind as to update us on your attempts to open a dialogue with Warlord Zinj. The woman at Mon Mothma's right hand stood. Though she wore a pale green gown gathered loosely at the waist with a silver belt, Wedge couldn't help but see Princess Leia ready for battle, the way he had seen her so many times before. It struck him as odd that a martial image could so easily replace the elegant vision before him, but he was reading the fight in her eyes and the fire in her spirit. Those qualities had made her one of the rebellion's most respected leaders, and clearly sustained her in her governmental activities. I have attempted through numerous channels to make contact with Warlord Zinj, but have been rebuffed every time. It appears he believes his possession of the superstar destroyer Iron Fist has made him into a force to be reckoned with in the galaxy. What little of his imperial career we know about indicates he is a man who embraces the idea that the ends do justify the means. He is a survivor, and shows cunning at playing his enemies off against each other. The leadership vacuum in the Imperial Navy post-Endor allowed him to rise further than was previously reasonable, then declare himself a warlord and begin his drive to take control of the Empire. Borsk Felia's cream-colored fur rippled as he stood. Councillor Organa, it would seem that this Zinj, if he is as cunning as you suggest, would be open to negotiations. How have you approached him? A trace of wariness tightened the flesh at Leia's eyes. We have tried contacts at various levels within his organization. Messages sent via the Imperial Holonet have gone unanswered, though your people have assured me they have been collected by Zinj. More light escapes from a black hole than information that comes back from him and his fleet. I suspect he wants to see how truly strong we are before he begins any negotiations with us. The Botham's violet eyes narrowed. If there is no information coming out of his organization, how do you know he is seeking data on us? Admiral Akbar nodded to Leia. If I might answer that, Counselor. The hint of a smile on her lips banished the fatigue from her face. Please, Admiral. Akbar remained seated and waited until the Botham sat back down before he spoke. Borsk's fur rippled again, this time quickly, which Wedge took as a mark of irritation. A little less than a standard week ago, a freighter appeared in the Peria system. It was challenged and responded with the proper passage codes, but a member of Rogue Squadron chose to do a closer check. The freighter launched 6 TIEs, 4 starfighters, and 2 bombers. The freighter fled, and all but one of the smaller ships was destroyed. The one that survived was a bomber that had been disabled by 2 Y-wings. Examination of it and interrogation of the pilot indicates the ship was sent by Warlord Zinj to confirm our conquest of Pyria, and, if the opportunity presented itself, to strike at the base. Borsk's face hardened. And your people let the freighter escape? Akbar's lids drifted down for a moment. Counselor Failure. The freighter was fully armed and deployed 6 fighter craft. On post, we had 2 Y-wings and 1 X-wing. Despite being outnumbered, our forces eliminated the 6 fighters and damaged the freighter, driving it off. The freighter fled before the fighter stream was eliminated, but even if it had not, engaging it would have been suicidal. I thought such missions were Rogue Squadron's specialty. Wedge felt color rising to his face. The last time that was suggested, it was another Bothan who did the suggesting. Admiral Akbar opened his hands. I would point out that to so easily dismiss Rogue Squadron sacrifices is to denigrate the sacrifices made by all peoples who have died in service to the rebellion. The Bothan councillor sat back, and Wedge's admiration for Akbar grew. The Admiral's veiled reference to sacrifices echoed the oft-heard Bothan lament about the number of Bothan agents who had died to secure the information about the second Death Star. Because the Bothans did not possess a strong military, as opposed to the Mon Calamari fleet forming the backbone of the New Republic's armed forces, they used the sacrifices of their people as their justification for sharing power in the New Republic. If Thalia devalued Rogue Squadron's contributions to the rebellion, he likewise eroded his own basis of power. Doman Barris, a flaxen-haired woman who represented the Corellian exiles on the council, stood. I believe we are heading towards the focus for this meeting, but I would prefer to cut directly to it instead of watching my colleagues scratch and claw their way there. Zinj knows, as do we, that whichever force is able to wrest Coruscant from the grip of the Imperial government will be seen as the legitimate, or at least strongest, claimant in governance. The Pyria system was taken to be a stepping stone to Coruscant, and Zinj now knows we do have it. The Wookiee and Celestan representatives nodded in agreement with Doman. Mon Mothma looked up. Admiral Akbar, if you are prepared to give your presentation. I am. Akbar stood, and General Sam, a small, balding, thickly built man, slipped into the chair the Mon Calamari had vacated. Sam linked his datapad into a jack on the edge of the table. Above the mirrored plate centered on the table, the holographic image of a world appeared. This is Coruscant. It was the administrative center of the old Republic, and retained that function when the Emperor seized power. Palpatine made an attempt to rename it Imperial Center, but it is known as such only in Imperial decrees. Coruscant is still seen as the heart of the galaxy, and many look to it as the center of order and authority, no matter who controls it. After the Emperor's death, a government was formed under the leadership of Saint Pestige. His suzerainty lasted 6 months until a coup by a coterie of other Imperial advisors forced him into exile. It appears that his ouster was organized by Isan Isard. She was definitely behind Pestige's hounding and death. She deftly undercut the bureaucrats she had used to vanquish Pestige and took control of the Empire for herself. While she maintains her title of Director of Intelligence, and is suggested she is holding the planet in stewardship, there is no doubt that she is in full control. As Akbar spoke, the planet dissolved into an image of Isard. A tall, slender human woman, she still seemed possessed of the vitality that the rebellion had begun to sap from Mon Mothma. Isard wore her hair long. Except for white side locks, her hair was as black as night and served to accentuate her severe beauty. Her most striking features became apparent as the image shifted to a close-up of her face. Her eyes were mismatched. The right one was an icy blue that had contributed as much as her demeanor to her nickname of Iceheart. By contrast, the left eye was a molten red. Wedge felt a shiver run down his spine just looking at her hologram, and he had no desire to make a closer acquaintance with her. Akbar continued. Despite her not being from a military background, she has in no way allowed the defenses of the Imperial homeworld to slacken. Outermost, we have Golan space defense stations. They are comparable in power to a Star Destroyer. They are not mobile, so eliminating them from a section of the sky over Coruscant will give us an area in which to operate, but eventually all of them will have to be neutralized. In addition to these defense stations, there are approximately 7 Victory-class Star Destroyers on station at Coruscant. They are ground-based fighter groups as well as the fighter wings stationed in and around the ship's shipyards and orbital factories. The orbital mirror stations and low-orbit skyhooks may also have been armed. Akbar clasped his hands behind his back. As formidable as all of that is, the primary problem in taking Coruscant is the overlapping defense shields. The image of the world had long since returned. As the Mon Calamari had described aspects of the defense, representations of them appeared in orbit around the planet. With his mention of the defense shields, two spheres constructed of hexagons appeared to encase the world. One moved in the direction of its orbit, the other moved in the opposite direction. The neon blue lattice work shrouded Coruscant and occluded any good view of it. To take Coruscant, we must eliminate the shields. There are a number of ways to do this, but none of them is simple. A direct assault would cost us more dearly than both Death Star battles combined. I think the only reasonable approach to taking Coruscant is to blockade the world. It is hardly self-sufficient. Even the defense stations only carry 3 standard months' worth of provisions. Faced with dwindling supplies, a negotiated surrender would be possible. Mon Mothma frowned. The problem with the blockade is twofold. The first is that it would keep our fleet at one place for an extended period of time. This would allow Isard to recall the Imperial fleet to drive us off. Akbar nodded. Or it could encourage naval officers in far-flung regions to sever their ties with the Empire, breaking it up further, giving us many warlords like Zinj to worry about. Borst's words came so softly they seemed almost purred. Pinning our fleet in one place would also allow Zinj to prey upon New Republic worlds. Akbar opened his hands. Yes, what you suggest might happen. Mon Mothma raised a hand and cut him off. The second problem with the blockade is that the people of Coruscant will suffer. My friend, you visited Coruscant when you were with Grand Moff Tarkin. You know there are vast populations of outcasts who dwell deep in the shadowed canyons of that metro world. They barely survive as it is. If supplies are cut off to Coruscant, they will suffer the most, and we cannot afford to be responsible for their suffering. This I know very well, Chief Counselor Mothma, but you face me with an impossible task. Akbar pointed the hand at the floating hologram of Coruscant. You want the world taken, but the means that will deliver it to us with the minimum of bloodshed is one that is unacceptable. It is possible to batter our way in there. I cannot say there will not be a significant amount of collateral damage. Damage that may harm people as much as any blockade. Yet even if that sort of damage is more acceptable from a diplomatic and political point of view, it leaves us with a reality that is militarily unacceptable. The world we take will be a world we cannot hold. Wedge nodded. To bring the shields down on a planet, standard doctrine dictated that the shields were to be probed for weaknesses, such as places where an atmospheric anomaly was causing a disruption. That weakened sector would be targeted, and a hole would be punched through it. The gap would then be used as a hole through which shield projectors would be destroyed by bombardment or laser fire. While that would bring the shields down and allow for a planetary assault, it would leave the planet defenseless until the shield generators could be repaired or, most likely, replaced. What you ask of me and my troops is not possible. Akbar shook his head. Coruscant, if taken in haste, will fall to another just as quickly, and all we have fought for in this rebellion will be for naught. That's the end of the chapter. Hope you enjoyed it. Talk to you soon.